Hello and welcome everyone from sunny The Hague. I wish you a good morning, a good afternoon and a good evening depending on which part of the world you are tuning into this event from. My name is Daan Stelder, this is my colleague Zanen van Amerongen, and we are international coordinators of the UCLG Peace Prize. There's a third colleague working with us, his name is Joppe Bastiaansen. He is also part of the Secretariat and he will be manning the YouTube live chat. So he will be answering any questions you have and other questions we will answer after the event.
So what will we actually do today? The event program of today, first we will start with a warm welcoming word of the Mayor of The Hague, Mr.Jan van Zanen. Then we will go into the UCLG Peace agenda. We will follow up with a panel discussion in which we will discuss the potential and the limits of what local governments can do in peace building. Then we will have a keynote speech from Professor Thuli Madonsela from South Africa. And then we will discuss the road to Daejeon, where the UCLG World Congress will be held. And finally, we will launch the 2022 UCLG Peace Prize. And also, throughout the whole event, we will give you some tips for upcoming applicants on how you can best improve your application, which we hope to see after this launch event.
Right, before we continue, we would like to ask you to share in the chat from which part of the world you are tuning in from. And I encourage you really to use this chat during the event to connect with our moderator, connect with each other, and give feedback on the things that you are hearing and discussing here. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce our first speaker to you. We are very pleased to have in the studio here today the Mayor of The Hague, Mr. Jan van Zanen, who is also the co-president of UCLG, and he speaks to us today from both of those positions. Mayor van Zanen, welcome to the studio. The floor
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Daan. Thank you very much, Sanne. Nice to be here. They're all a very warm welcome from The Hague. My name is Jan van Zanen, and I'm here both as the co-president of UCLG, the United Cities and Local Government, and as the Mayor of The Hague. Naturally, I would have preferred to be with you in person, but let's be thankful for the fact that we can still be together in this way, even if it's only virtually. And we are here to kick off the third edition of the UCLG Peace Prize together, a prize which, for all of us, is very close to our heart. Because this prize honors the efforts of so many women and men around the world who work at the local level to build a peaceful society. War and peace. Many people associate that with nation states. One country invading another, for instance. Or with international organizations like the peace missions of the United Nations. Many conflicts, however, begin at local level. And conversely, there can be no lasting peace unless it is rooted in those places where most people live together, in towns and villages. And it's very important to continue to work for lasting peace, even if a community is not afflicted by active conflict. And this Peace Prize is expressly intended for such initiatives. Those who were in Durban in 2019 will remember the chilling stories of the violence to which countless people are subjected in countless places all over the world. But what I also remember are the examples of all those men and women who try to stop it, even if driven only by the courage of desperation. Bridge builders in the truest sense of the word, guided by tolerance, driven by a genuine desire for peace. A mentality that we can clearly see reflected in the inhabitants and local government administrators of Arsal, winner of the UCLG Peace Prize in 2019. In Arsal in Lebanon, which has been hard hit by IS and al-Nusra violence, the municipality was able to diffuse tensions between refugees from Syria and the people who had traditionally lived in the area. Fear has given way to dialogue and mediation, something which doesn't happen by itself, of course. To quote, "Peace is not the absence of war, but a virtue born of spirit and steadfast desire. End of quote. Words written by Baruch de Spinoza, which are entirely applicable to the commitment to peace shown by our Saul's local government. Spinoza, the philosopher who lived and worked in The Hague more than 3 centuries ago. The plan to create this prize was also conceived in The Hague. That was in 2008, during the First World Conference on City Diplomacy, organized by VNG International, together with partners such as UCLG and the Hague Municipality in the Peace Palace, a building which symbolizes our international city of peace and justice like no other building. My highly esteemed predecessor, Mayor Wim Deetman, was there at the inception of the award. And to my great delight, he still sits on the panel of judges alongside other leading international figures. I witnessed the presentation of the UCLG Peace Prize for the first time. That was at the UCLG World Conference in Bogota in 2016, when the prize was awarded to Kauswagen in the Philippines for their From Arms to Farms project. It was about former rebels handing in their weapons and making a new start in organic farming. 3 years later, I had the honor to be there again, this time in Durban, South Africa. How could we have imagined that 1 year later the world would be overshadowed by COVID-19, as it still is today, a pandemic with huge consequences? Countless people have lost their lives or their livelihoods because of it. Economies that were already weak have been completely disrupted, all of which provides fuel for potential conflict and violence. More than ever, dear friends, more than ever, it is necessary to strengthen and support the position of local governments, so that they can do everything in their power to overcome this crisis, to alleviate poverty and avoid disaster, to limit conflicts while strengthening and preserving peace. Everyone watching today, I therefore call on you to sign up. Please sign up for the UCLG Peace Prize 2022. Really, just do it. After all, it is about nothing less than securing one of the 4 freedoms formulated by President Roosevelt: the right to live free from fear. Thank you all.
Thank you, Mayor van Zanen, and also co-president of the UCLG. I think he has clearly said that it couldn't be more fitting that we have this launch here in The Hague, where also the first World Congress on City Diplomacy was held in 2008.
Now, before we continue, I have the first tip for you, all your potential applicants that are watching this, either now live or later on YouTube. And hopefully these tips that you get today will allow you to just get that edge on the competitors and score really well with your application. Our first tip is be concrete when you fill out your application. Tell us what you did, when you did it, how you did it, and which results you achieved. Because the more clear your information is, the easier it is for our evaluation committee to score your application. And that might just make the difference on making it to the finals. Now, I would like to introduce to you someone who has also been involved with this award since its very start. A familiar face at all the events that we had with the Peace Prize and also all the congresses where it has been awarded so far, and also a key player in the road towards the next award ceremony. Our next speaker is Ms. Emilia Saíz. She is the Secretary General of UCLG, and she's joining us from Barcelona today. She will tell us a bit more about the UCLG Peace Agenda in a broader sense and how this instrument of UCLG is positioned in it. Emilia, thank you for joining us today. Goedemiddag, and the floor is yours. Thank you.
Goedemiddag, dankjewel. Het is echt een plezier om met jullie te zijn. It's a great pleasure indeed. And what a great speech from the co-president. How inspiring. Look, peace is very much in the DNA of the worldwide movement of local and regional governments, of our municipal movement. It is a century-old movement that was created before the Great Wars, but that got a lot of power and a lot of death after these Great Wars. It is undoubtedly so that city diplomacy and the power of dialogue, of people talking with each other, have been the foundation of our world organization in the shape that we know it today. And United Cities and Local Governments also truly believes that peace is still the key component of any development agenda. In fact, the crises that we face in our cities and territories are crises that always have the potential in finishing the way that we understand peace. And peace, as co-president Van Zanen was saying, is not simply the absence of war. It's also not the absence of conflict. And this is why we think that good local governance with the people, for the people, based in the empowerment of the communities, in transparency, in accountability, in participation, is the kind of governance that we need to ensure that there is a common understanding of what our livelihoods can be and a common understanding of living together. And those are the basis for the peace agenda of United Cities and Local Governments. The other key component of our peace agenda is the notion that in post-conflict situations, and there are many around the world, and I think that was at the very heart of our city diplomacy summit in 2008 in The Hague, in the wonderful Peace Palace, we were saying, look, post-conflict you can only address if you talk with the people involved. And it is something that last year's winner also have clearly demonstrated. It is about making our territories, our cities, our populations ready to face the challenges that are yet to come. I have a great panel with us that are going to talk through some concepts around the roles that local governments have to play, because indeed, very often peace is looked at as something that national governments need to talk about. It is talked about as an issue of borders, but I think that the COVID pandemic and some of the tensions in our cities are demonstrated that it is not about borders, that it is something much more around culture and communities living together. Allow me to start with Jen Nijman. I think she's actually online here with me. She's the chairperson of the executive board of the Acer Institute and a jury member of the UCLG Peace Prize. And Janne, I understand that you're going to start with a statement that triggers our thoughts, that you are going to explain that statement, and then we will start having a discussion with the other panelists. Do you want me to read your statement, or do you want to do it yourself?
No, it's okay. Please read my statement and I'll explain it. That's great.
All right. International law and institutions need cities for peace and justice. Music in my ears. Explain that to us, Janne.
Thank you so much, Emilia. It's a real pleasure to be with you on this occasion, an occasion that is about recognizing the role of cities and local governments in peacemaking. And that's a tremendous value to put that in the forefront of our global challenges. So I chose for today this proposition: international law and institutions need cities for peace and justice. And our mayor in The Hague, Jan van Zanen, just said what is the traditional perspective of us international lawyers. State peace is, and especially war and violence, is about states, concerns of states. And we use the international structure of interstate structure to deal with that traditionally. And I think you just said something very important. There is a 100-year-old movement, which is a peace movement, a movement of municipalities. And in international law, we start to recognize that, to see that. There is, in general, a turn to the city. We see it in climate change initiatives. We see it in human rights. There is a general turn to the urban, to the cities, to the local, recognizing the importance of their roles in the promotion of peace, in the promotion and protection of human rights, something that international law and international institutions cannot do alone, whether it's in The Hague or currently am I in Geneva, in the middle of all these UN institutions. And there is a general understanding that peace and justice requires these very concrete initiatives that you just mentioned and that Dan explained. These initiatives that we can highlight through the UCLG Peace Prize and that can inspire us all. So international law and institutions need cities, and I think that cities and municipalities increasingly turn to international law and institutions to make sure we face global challenges together. And whether that's in disarmament or climate change, or human rights, migration, and UCLG obviously is a leader in that movement. So again, a great pleasure to be here, and I look forward to the discussion on how the international turns urban and the urban turns international. We have to do it together. Thank you, Emilia.
We have this concept, Jana, about interurban, no longer international, but interurban. Look, we always say also in this movement that when states do not talk to each other, cities still do. And I think this is also very relevant to take into account a possible new multilateral system where cities, local and regional governments can play a different role. Let me have Daniel Mack representing here today Peace in Our Cities network. Mack is also here on Daniel Mack, right? Sorry, yes, Daniel Mack. You're here with us as well online. Welcome. Reactions to the statement, the strong statement that Jana just made?
Thank you very much, Emilia, and thank you so much, UCLG Peace Prize, of having me here. And thank you to the mayor and Jana for the very thought-provoking initial statements. No, I think Jana is absolutely correct, of course. I mean, obviously, we'll be preaching to the choir a bit to ourselves among panelists, because this is something we believe in, I think, and we've worked on for many years in different segments of peace building and violence reduction. But I think there is very clearly a shift and kind of away from, let's say, this Westphalian model where everything happens at the nation state level, and cities start, in fact, to communicate directly amongst themselves. You know, obviously the issue of paradiplomacy is essential. And in so many ways, major urban centers around the world have sometimes are more alike each other than some other regions of their own country. So obviously, if we give away some aspects of culture and language, a city I grew up in, São Paulo, Brazil, it's much more like Mexico City or Bogota, or in some ways some of the big cities in the United States, than perhaps some of the regions in Brazil itself. And the difficulties that these cities are having, that they're having on their territory, are shared. And the only way really to overcome them is sharing knowledge. Very often, one city will have an innovation, one mayor will have a brilliant idea, one NGO will have a fantastic program that, if it's scaled up and shared around the world, can really have a huge impact in levels of peace, really.
Thank you very much for those inputs. I think you are absolutely right. I mean, looking at each other, talking with each other, the relations between each other really shape our notion of peace. Let us go now to another interesting statement from Dion van den Berg, the Senior Policy Advisor at Pax for Peace. And your statement is a long one, Dion, so I'm going to let you go through it, run us through the reasoning.
Well, thank you, Emilia, and I enjoy being here, remembering being part of these very early discussions back in 2008, and even a regular dinner in advance in the preparation of how do we frame this great idea, and it's good to see that it really took off, and it's up to all of us now to make it even stronger. Now, my statement is, indeed, it's a long one, but I'll explain in just indeed a few sentences. If we want local peace building initiatives to have a bigger impact, then it's paramount that we step up international solidarity initiatives to support peace building by local governments and civil society organizations. So here in my statement, the key focus is on the context of war and the first phase of post-conflict reconstruction and rehabilitation. And what we know as a peace organization, also working in many of these areas, and I should have been in Iraq, in Mosul this week, but due to COVID-19, I'm now calling in from the Netherlands. But what we know is that these places are often trying to promote peace from a context of isolation. So we need more international solidarity to keep them moving, to support them. And how does it work? What does it entail, international solidarity with these colleagues in conflict and post-conflict areas? Well, first of all, it's a lifeline. People will tell you the idea not to be totally forgotten had huge impact, and it kept us going. That is one, not to be underestimated. There's the practical support that we can give. There may be some material components, but also providing expertise so that the particular expertise that we have in our cities can be used to reconstruct, to rebuild, to revitalize communities that are in ruin. There's also, I think, the very important dimension of the international lobby, the advocacy, uniting these local initiatives. In some of the literature, they are being referred to as the Islands of Civility. And I think that's a very proper wording. Islands of Civility. There you are, the mayor, the council members, civil society, citizens, trying to hold on to human dignity, to principles of democracy, rule and law, and human rights. And if we can build better connections between these islands of civility, we can raise their voices, strengthen their voices at the levels that are now sort of determining what's going to happen. This is the interstate level and the international governmental level. So if we step up our initiatives, international solidarity, we can strengthen that, we can give a stronger voice where their initiatives have to be heard. Last remark, is that difficult? Yes. Will there be obstacles? Yes, of course. But if we all wait until things are calm, then we are all too late. We should try to express meaningful solidarity when the going is tough, when the problems are big. And that's a challenge. And I hope that with the presentation of many, many good examples for the UCLG Peace Prize, we can also show that it can be done. That would be my hope, and that is my statement. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dion. And I do remember those moments and how important always when we hand over the prize, the reaction of our membership and all the cities that are receiving the prize, they talk about it is so good to be recognized. It's so good to be acknowledged. It's so good to hear that our efforts are contributing to peace, to this broader goal, and also this issue about dignity and how even in those difficult moments you are trying to keep your sanity and to feel as a human. I was hearing about Sarajevo and how they organize concerts underground and how people still were trying. It's not about having fun in parallel to a war. It's about being human, being a community. So thank you very much, Dion, for those remarks. Allow me now to go to Ambassador Welile Lampo. I hope you're here. Please do put your camera on. I see your name. He's a senior advisor to our very dear partner, Accord. Are you with us, Ambassador? The floor is yours. If I don't see you, I will move on. I am not seeing the ambassador yet. He might have gone for a little while. Why don't we go back to you, Daniel? Daniel, your statement. Please share it with us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I'm Daniel Mack. I'm the program lead for violence reduction at Pathfinders for Peaceful, Just, and Inclusive Societies, which is hosted by the Center of International Cooperation at NYU. Pathfinders is one of 4 co-facilitators of Peace in Our Cities, which is the network I'm representing today. And it's really an honor to be here on behalf of Peace in Our Cities, because our vision, the vision that drives Peace in Our Cities, really dovetails with that of the UCLG Peace Prize. We are also adamant about bringing more attention to the role of cities and local governments in efforts for peace and violence reduction. And we believe that the sharing of best practices among peers is among the best available tools to strengthen cities' capacities. Our platform strives to create concrete, participatory, and evidence-based exchanges to reduce violence levels in member cities. In the 2 years since its inception, Peace in Our Cities has grown into a network of 22 cities and 30 organizations between community-based and international partners. We've strived to provide our members with best practices on violence prevention, access to international partners, microgrants for piloting innovation, and solidarity in achieving our shared ambitious goal of halving urban violence by 2030. We found, in fact, that local governments can do a huge amount to promote peace, indeed, often much more than many realize, because all violence is ultimately local. Even international or transnational conflict has local peculiarities and drivers in the territory. And so progress really demands local participation and knowledge through community-centered, evidence-informed practice. Indeed, while sometimes focusing on limitations, and of course, some jurisdictions, for example, may not have their own police forces or may have limited financial resources, cities and local governments can make transformational change. Key ingredients, in our view, are robust political leadership at the top and a focus on prevention and integration. So instituting not only a whole of government approach with all germane parts of the city government, but also a whole of society one. And this last point, just to finalize, is particularly dear to us at Peace in Our Cities as the only international network working on violence reduction that includes local NGOs as members in tandem with city halls. Just as the national lens is insufficient for violence reduction and peace efforts, it is also so that the most effective violence prevention programs are not strictly governmental, but rather integrate the knowledge and legitimacy of diverse local civil society actors in both design and implementation. These are also, we hope, characteristics spotlighted by the future winner and, in fact, all the finalists of the UCLG Peace Prize. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Daniel. I'm going to invite Jana in just a moment to provide some feedback to that strong statement, but I couldn't agree more. What we say in UCLG is that it's not always about your competencies and jurisdictions, but it's about the kind of culture that you are able to create. And it is about developing peace cultures. Is not a single one, right? There are many actions that compose that. It's about channeling the conflict so that those that arise in our cities and territories are not transformed into actual violence. And it's about addressing inequalities and discriminations that can be very much at the core of this. Jane, any thoughts on this? And then I will go to Ambassador. I see you there, Welile. I will go to you in a second. Jane.
Thank you so much. Yeah, great statement. And obviously, I tend to echo this, but let me say that let me relate this to the international in the sense that we need the intercity dimension, as Emilia said, But what you are emphasizing, I couldn't agree more. This is not just a turn to the local government level, it's a turn to communities, it's a turn to people, it's a turn to really nurturing cultures, but nurturing practices, understanding that peace is something different than the contrary of war. That was already mentioned earlier. So the whole of society should be involved. And I think that is also behind this turn to the urban, to the local in these international organizations. They realize that it's impossible to do this alone. It requires initiatives in the communities, together with the communities, through cities, because otherwise one cannot be effective and one cannot be legitimate. There is surely also this element of doing it together as a society is more democratic, is more engaging all who are concerned and touched by injustices. So there's much more to say, but I'll stop here for now and maybe return later. Over to you, Emilia.
Thank you. It's not only more powerful, I would say, Jan, it's also more sustainable. Whatever is not embraced by the community as a whole, it will not be sustainable. Allow me now to go to Ambassador Welile from Accord, a very important partner for us in this peace agenda that has inspired a lot of the work that we have done in the Cities and Territories of Peace Forum that we drive, and that is a very important building block for this peace prize. Ambassador, you have a strong statement, including about the role of youth and this conflict management strategies. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. I'm happy the camera works now. On behalf of Accord and then, of course, on behalf of Vasu Gounden, who was not able to make it because he's still in mourning following the passing of his father. He then asked me to represent him, and I will proceed to read the statement, and I hope we'll follow up with the debate thereafter. Global urban populations are growing rapidly. Urban dwellers make up more than half the global population and will number about 66.4 billion people by 2050. Around 90% of this increase is expected to be located in Asia and Africa. While the links between urbanization, unrest, violence, and conflict are complex, cities and towns can provide natural targets for both violent attacks and the recruitment of disaffected youth by radicalized groups. The high population densities of urban areas also increases the probability of geographically concentrated groups who can become more prone to conflict. Proximity makes it easier to communicate, mobilize, and act collectively. And unrest can incorporate large concentrations of disaffected and alienated citizens. The population density in urban areas also means that the potential for violent acts are amplified. Violence in urban areas may also take many forms, from seemingly isolated instances of crime and gender-based violence to riots, terrorism, and structured political violence. There is a heterogeneity of factors associated with urban conflicts, including complex patterns of causation and interdependence, making the eradication of violence extremely difficult. Another potential risk of urbanization is that the urban-rural demographic shift brings with it a shift in economic and social dynamics. Urbanization may disrupt the established status quo by giving more power to often industrial and mercantile urban actors, and taking power away from often agrarian rural locations. This in turn disrupts the established social institutions and changes how individuals identify. Those various social, economic, and political shifts are leading to local government institutions being outpaced in how they manage these situations and triggers for conflict. These problems are most acute in the poorest and most fragile states, where rapidly growing populations may outpace already strained public services, leading to poverty, alienation, crime, and increased social tensions. Managing cities and urban growth is therefore one of the defining challenges of the 21st century. If managed well, cities can act as engines of growth and provide inhabitants with better job opportunities, improve healthcare, housing, safety, and social development. Further, cities can contribute to national growth through increased revenue generation and political stability, as well as playing a role in post-conflict reconciliation. Conversely, if cities are poorly managed and governed, can lead to higher levels of youth unemployment, poverty, inequality, and conflict. Local governments are positioned close to the source of local level conflict, which makes them key stakeholder in the prevention, mitigation, and resolution of urban conflicts. Local governments can should build understanding on how urban areas intersect with conflict in order to prepare locally nuanced, holistic management strategies. And of course, this provides us also with the possibility that we can bring youth into the process of contributing towards the management and mitigation of conflicts that arise in the urban centers, which in many cases, they become the key players. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Welile Lampo. Always very hard to interrupt you. We went a little bit over time, so I'm going to ask Dion to be brief on his feedback. Very important statement from the ambassador. Cities, the greatest creation of humanity, probably, but also with many pitfalls in there. Dion.
Yes, well, thank you, Mr. Ambassador. And two short remarks. I think one of the big challenges we face is the need to make a better connection between the state building, which is often focusing on the institutions and it's top down, and peace building, which is sort of focusing on culture, on attitudes, on interhuman relationships, etc. And in the financing, in the programming, we fail to make the proper connection between the two, even though we aim at prosperity and democracy and human rights, etc. So I do see in particular cities playing a key role in making that connection between the state building and the peace building. That is one remark. The second is, with in particular rapid growth of cities, there's always urgency. But there's also conflict of interests, of social interests, of cultural interests, of economic interests, of the interests of men and women. And they may not be the same. So what I would recommend as an idea is perhaps for cities, big cities, to develop an instrument that all of the bigger policy developments they engage in, they make an assessment how this particular policy will impact dynamics of conflict, of war and peace, so that we try to anticipate possible impact of the bigger housing, the economic, etc. developments of the bigger cities. That may help also to have more prevention of conflict with the rapid growth of the urban centers. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dion. I think we need to wrap up this part of the discussion, and I cannot do it without recalling that while in the past we have seen the roots of conflict and of war in international relations, in the time to come, as the ambassador was saying, we will see the challenges to peace coming from the inside. We will see increase in national and urban conflicts that will be instigated by inequalities, by discrimination, by lack of transparency. I cannot, however, recall that there is this international dimension that remains extremely important in a world that is so intertwined, our fates are so intertwined. It is not possible to think of peace without, for instance, universal vaccination. We need to still think of universal approaches to the crisis that we have. I feel as if we have a series here, a potential series of discussions. I am really privileged that I have been able to guide us around these interesting concepts. And I am very hopeful that my organization, United Cities and Local Governments, that the worldwide movement of cities and their associations can actually contribute to building true peace cultures and a strong development agenda for the world around a pact for the future, a renewed social contract with people, planet, and government at the core. Back to the studio in The Hague.
Thank you, Emilia and panelists. And I agree with you. I think we should maybe make a series on this, but unfortunately, yeah, we have to move on. I could listen to you way longer, and thank you all again. Well, I think this discussion clearly shows the potential and the diversity that we have, and that local governments can pose, and yeah, what we should envision and just contribute to all. Well, to give a tip to the potential applicants, I would like to say it's not all about the mayor. Even though, and sure, mayors can be the driving force behind an initiative, and of course they are the face to a municipality and a community, but tell us really, who are the legs? Who is it really doing? Who's behind the scene? Because most of the time it's not only anchored in the mayor, but it's anchored in an organization. Therefore the award is for an institution and not awarded to a single individual. On that note, I would like to give the floor to Dan.
Thank you, Sanne. We see that on our YouTube live chat, we have viewers tuning in from Gaborone, Botswana, for example, and Kigali in Rwanda. Actually, I came back from Rwanda this morning, so to the people in Rwanda watching, I would like to say Muraho, Murakoze cyane for your hospitality once again. Use that chat, people, engage on the topics that are being discussed. If you have any questions about the prize or anything else, please share it in the chat. We have a moderator there with you. Perhaps you can also share, for those of you tuning in later, from where are you watching this and which organization do you represent. I have tip number 3 for potential applicants, and that is you are not alone in your challenges. Whatever you are facing, in which corner of the world you are, most likely there's a local government close or far away that is experiencing similar challenges. So in your application, please describe the learning potential. How can this approach be replicated elsewhere for local governments that are facing similar challenges? Use this tip to your advantage, please. Then I would like to introduce our next speaker. She will share today on Reconciliation Day her thoughts on this topic. She will draw on her wealth of expertise and experience, and we are very pleased to have with us today Professor Tulisile Madonsela. She is the Law Trust Chair at the University of Stellenbosch. She is also the former Public Protector of South Africa, and we are proud to have her also as a jury member of the UCLG Peace Prize. Thank you, Professor, for joining us today. it looks like you might be muted still on Zoom.
Thank you, dear colleagues. What a privilege, firstly, to be part of the launch of the latest or third version of the UCLG Prize. It is an amazing opportunity to be part of this. And for me, I must indicate that sharing this moment with you on Reconciliation Day makes it extra special. Today is the 16th of December in South Africa, which is very appropriate to discuss given the fact that it's all about peace. On this day, in the past, the Afrikaners celebrated this as the day on which they felt that God was with them and they were able to defeat the Zulus. On the other end, the African National Congress celebrated this day because that was the day after the leaders were arrested and the organizations were banned, therefore making it impossible to operate politically. They formed Umkhonto weSizwe. And with the onset of democracy, this day was taken away. Instead of it being either a win or lose situation, it became a day of reconciliation for all of us. And it is an opportunity for us to reflect with the rest of the world around what causes war, and can democracies operating properly prevent conflict and ultimately war. But I like what colleagues have said, that peace is not the absence of war. And that takes us to cities. What roles do cities play in advancing peace and guardrailing peace? Once we have it, how do they make sure that they play an important role in acting as guardrails that keep peace on track? And I thought that it's apt to share a quote from Eleanor Roosevelt, who was given the responsibility of leading the drafting of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which was the world leaders' offering in terms of a global pact to prevent the need for people to take up arms against each other again in order to assert their rights and their freedoms. She said the following, which I think is important for municipalities. Where, after all, do human rights begin? In small places close to home. So close, so small, that they cannot be seen on any maps in the world. Unless these rights have meaning there, they have little meaning everywhere. And for me, that's where cities play a role in advancing peace, by making sure that everyone feels that their humanity is affirmed, that they're treated with equal consideration, that where there's been past exclusion, cities are at the forefront of healing the divisions of the past by reducing inequalities. And ultimately, if I may use a term that we use here in Southern Africa, I do think that cities have an opportunity to return the world to a peaceful coexistence that is based on Ubuntu. Ubuntu is a philosophy of life in sub-Saharan Africa that was about understanding that peaceful coexistence can only be possible if we appreciate our interconnectedness as humanity and our need to make sure that not only do we look after each other, but we also make sure that in enjoying our freedoms, we don't do so at the expense of others. That there was a balance between personal freedom and group solidarity as well as public good. And I think that cities have an amazing role to play. Here in South Africa, we have seen since the dawn of democracy, cities playing some role in reducing inequalities. through providing shelters, through providing clinics where possible, and assisting with ECDC centers or early childhood education centers. I must indicate where cities don't play this role, where homelessness becomes a problem, where the homeless people are harassed, anger becomes the character of the city. And in a country such as ours, where inequality has a color, where inequality has a gender, nationality, etc., when cities are not at the forefront of reducing inequalities, reducing poverty, and preventing the exacerbation of existing inequalities, then they become part of the problem. And therefore, I am excited that our cities here in South Africa are aligned with the objectives of this initiative. I live in Stellenbosch at the moment, and I've seen what positive role can a city play in these matters. And I'm not going to suggest that Stellenbosch is an angelic city, but what I know is that I live in a city where there's an acknowledgement by the leadership that a wrong was perpetrated against people. Their land was taken away, their schools were taken away. In fact, one of the schools is an asset of the university at this stage, and there's communication around how do we give back this asset to the community, but also how do we repair the damage that was done when these assets were taken away, because it's not enough to just take back the assets. And therefore, this just reminds me of a particular framework for equality that cities can embrace, where they look at how do we, when we devise city strategies, city plans, which we call IDPs here, integrated development plans, that are aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. How do we make sure that all voices are represented in their diversity? How do we make sure that the needs of each group and the character of their lives and their culture is recognized? And where possible, how do cities play a role in restitutive processes, in making sure that areas where there are no sporting facilities, where there are no culture, arts and culture facilities, they work with civic leadership to make sure that these facilities are made available to everyone. Just lastly to say, as the University of Stellenbosch, we found the South African Local Government Association to be very responsive to the ideas we have around cities playing a meaningful role in advancing social justice. And one of our pilot projects is about using data analytics for prospective impact assessments. Often we assess impact of policies when the damage has been done. We have designed a tool that we're piloting that has 9 dimensions, where a city, and then later, of course, national government can use it too, can predict how its planned policy will impact in different groups in society. So it has to ask questions such as, is this aligned with constitutional objectives? Who is the target beneficiary? Are there winners and losers? Have we ensured that there's fair differentiation where appropriate? For example, people with disabilities might need different kinds of buses, etc. Or if we're going to close shops for COVID-19, who is going to be a winner and who's going to be a loser? Have we used data that is sufficiently disaggregated, that also even looks at intersectional identities, such as being poor, Black, female, and disabled, and possibly being lesbian or a foreigner? All of these identities that intersect in such a way that they pulled back in the schemes that society elaborates as part of the fruits of democracy. We want to make sure that they ask questions. Is it possible that this policy gives an unfair advantage to a group unintentionally? But where there's a need to reduce existing imbalances, have we built something to that effect? If one group is going to be excluded, as happened with COVID-19 rules, have we looked at less harmful alternatives? And if there are no less harmful alternatives, do we have a compensatory strategy to make sure that those that we are going to disadvantage are immediately compensated? And lastly, are we meaningfully engaging everyone? Because it's not enough to say we're going to talk to everyone via social media. What about those that can't engage with us through social media? Are we engaging with everyone? Are we meeting everyone where we are? And ultimately, I do think that this prize and this initiative is about putting cities, putting city managers and leaders at the forefront of returning the world to operating on the basis of shared humanity, which here in Southern Africa we call Ubuntu. I am because we are. I will look after you in order to assure our collective future. And when we do that, we build the kind of resilient communities and cities that are envisaged in SDG number 11, read together with SDG 16, which is about peace everywhere. Thank you.
Professor Tulise Madonsela, and thank you for your inspiring and also kind words. And I will take home your notion of Ubuntu. Then the fourth tip for potential applicants, it's show us what you do. Also include pictures, videos, so we can get a clear image of what you're doing, and hopefully we can extend this event to a documentary.
Yes, some of these videos that have been produced in the past with these finalists, they have always been really inspiring to see, because it really brings to life the initiatives that we have only read about before. And it really gives the jury an extra insight into your project. Besides that, these videos will be used for communication purposes in the future to ensure other local governments can learn from your initiative. Now, we also have video material for you. We have a video contribution from Mayor Hae Tae-yong. I excuse myself for my pronunciation. My knowledge of the Korean language is not very strong. And he represents the Korean city of Daejeon, who are the hosts of the next UCLG World Congress. We will go to their video contribution right now. Thank you.
안녕하십니까. 대한민국 대전광역시장 허태정입니다. 150만 대전 시민과 함께 반가운 인사를 드립니다. 잘 아시는 것처럼 제7회 UCLG 총회가 우리 대전에서 열립니다. 하나가 되어 극복해 나가는 지역 및 지방 정부들이란 주제로 2022년 10월 10일부터 14일까지 개최됩니다. 아울러 내년 총회에서 제3회 UCLG 평화상을 시상합니다. 대전은 총회 개최 도시로서 UCLG 평화상을 시상할 수 있게 되어 더욱 뜻깊고 영광스럽게 생각합니다. UCLG 평화상은 2016년 보고타 총회에서 시작해 3년마다 평화 증진에 노력한 지자체에 수여하는 상입니다. 이번 제3회 UCLG 평화상 공모에 관심 있는 지자체에 적극적인 참여를 바랍니다. 대전시는 내년 총회에서 한반도 평화 메시지를 국제사회에 전달해 세계 평화 증진에 기여하고자 합니다. UCLG 사무국 및 아태 지부는 UCLG 회원인 북한 도시연맹이 참여하여 세계인에게 평화 메시지를 전달하는 계기가 되기를 희망합니다. 평화는 UCLG 주요 의제인 만큼 내년 총회가 많은 도시가 모여 세계 평화를 논의하는 뜻깊은 자리가 되길 기대합니다. 알차게 준비했으니 제7회 UCLG 총회와 제3회 UCLG 평화상에 여러분의 많은 관심과 협조 부탁드립니다. 고맙습니다.
The stage of global urban diplomacy will be Daejeon. UCLG, with 240,000 local governments from 140 countries around the world. Now the entire world is paying attention to Daejeon. No matter what you imagine, it all comes true in Daejeon. World Summit of Local and Regional Leaders, Daejeon.
UCLG Daejeon, Congress 2022.
Right, we would like to thank the Mayor of Daejeon for his contribution, and also use this opportunity to thank our colleagues in Daejeon who are working so hard with us in preparing for this UCLG World Congress in October next year. We are certainly looking forward to the Congress and meeting our prospective finalists there. But before we get there, we have a whole selection process lined up, of course. Let's have a look.
Well, of course, today marks the launch of the 2022 UCLG Peace Prize. Then we will go into this moment will mark the opening of the applications, of which the deadline will be on the 1st of March, 2022.
Right, then we will continue to throughout April and May with the technical scoring of all the cases submitted. We have a technical evaluation committee who will use the criteria that are posted on our website to score your applications. Based on the technical scorings, the jury will then, throughout May and June, come to a selection of the finalists. They may reach out to you through us to ask for more information, more footage of your initiative, until they have enough information to determine the set of finalists. We will then work throughout July, August, and September with the finalists to prepare for the UCLG World Congress, which they will be sponsored to attend to present their initiative. We will make documentaries together with the finalists to give a good view of their projects at the event, but also after.
And then in October, we will have the award ceremony where the finalists will not only present their initiatives, but we will also award the winner. And the final prize will be a prize of 20,000 euros. Then it's not done yet. We will have an international dissemination campaign where we will try to generate international public attention for the role that local governments can play in peace building. And that will just continue the years after the award ceremony. Now, last but not least, next up is Mr. Ton Rombout. He's a former mayor for almost 35 years, senator of the Netherlands, and also the ambassador of the UCLG Peace Prize. And he will now officially launch the UCLG Peace Prize 2022. Welcome.
Thank you. This is the book Our Children's Children Will Thank Us for Reading. A philosopher's contribution to saving the world. One of those landmark books with the power to shift a mindset. Dear ladies and gentlemen, what book are these three rave reviews about? It's this book. This is the Dutch version, but it is called in English The Good Ancestor. It's written by the philosopher Roman Krznaric, difficult name to pronounce. Published in 2020 on its 5th printing, translated into several languages. But why? Why will our children's children be grateful to you and me when we read this book? Because this leading public philosopher calls for long-term thinking in a short-term world. In our age, driven by the tyranny of the now, with 24/7 news, the latest tweet, and the buy now button commanding our attention, we rarely stop to consider how our actions will affect future generations. Krznaric argues that there is still hope, because humankind has over the centuries shown to have innate ability to plan for posterity and take action that will resonate for decades, for centuries, for millennia to come. The writer asks us the question, asks you and me the question, do we want to be good ancestors? Do we really want to be good ancestors? If so, he says, now it is the time to recover and enrich this imaginative skill of cathedral thinking, to expand our time horizons, sharpen our foresight, and consider the interests of generations yet unborn in our decisions of today. So to say, the interests of the grandchildren of our grandchildren. And for Krasnaric, this is not just about climate change, but it is also about protection of our democracies, about safeguarding human rights, upholding the rule of law. And ladies and gentlemen, who can call himself a better ancestor than the ones who strive to stop or avoid conflicts, to build bridges and dialogue after conflict and promote a peaceful environment? Ladies and gentlemen, the creation of the triennial UCLG Peace Prize, we aim to celebrate successful initiatives of local governments and stimulate other local governments to follow suit. As the ambassador of the UCLG Peace Prize, it's my pleasure and an honor to launch today the 3rd edition of this prize. Today starts the period in which local governments from all over the world may apply for this initiative. The application package that I'm getting here contains the application form, an overview of the scoring criteria, and the detailed timeline for the selection procedure. It is possible to apply in English, French, or Spanish. The application package is available in each of these languages. It does not take much time or effort to apply. You can start the procedure by just filling out some basic information and a very short description. And I'm already looking forward to meeting those of you who make it to the finals in Korea. Meeting the representatives of the finalists and learning more about their inspiring projects is for me personally always the highlight of this project. Normally I get goosebumps of all your projects. Submitting a short application now can be the start of an inspiring journey for you that really puts the spotlights on your municipality, connects you with peers around the world, and allows you to strengthen your project. I hope to see a group of applicants that reflects the diversity of possibilities in which local governments can work for peace, coming from a diversity of places in the world, be it Canada, South Sudan, Peru, or Turkey. Inspiring initiatives at a local level are happening everywhere. Everywhere, time and again, local administrators prove to be a good ancestor. Thank you for your attention.
The UCLG Peace Prize is awarded every 3 years to a local government that implements an effective initiative to promote peace. This way, the prize generates more attention for the role of local governments in this field, and it highlights good examples to inspire other local governments. Launched in The Hague, City of Peace and Justice, the applications for the prize are now open. By collecting a wide range of good examples, the prize gives a stage to local governments in all corners of the world and helps strong applicants to document their peace initiatives. Relevant initiatives can include reducing gang violence in a city, welcoming large groups of refugees, enhancing social cohesion, or disarming rebels. The ways in which local governments can contribute to peace are manifold, and this can take place both in areas of active conflict and regions that have experienced peace for decades. The award ceremony of this third edition of the prize will take place at the UCLG World Congress, hosted by the Korean city of Daejeon in October 2022. Selected finalists will receive support to produce a video about their project and be sponsored to attend the Congress to present their initiatives. The winning municipality is awarded with a grant of €20,000 to strengthen their initiative. Does your local government also have an initiative that promotes peace? Then apply now for the third edition of the Peace Prize.
And we are open. We are very much looking forward to receiving all your applications. Thank you very much, Senator Rumbouts, for sharing your inspiring words and for chairing this milestone moment for the award. I for sure will read that book. You have convinced me, and I'm looking forward to learning from it. Now, to get you on your way with your applications, we have one final tip for you, and that is use the space that you get. Really use the space that you get to give us the information that we need to properly assess your project. You can be concise in your information, but please include the details that are being asked of you and relate to the criteria that are being used for scoring. Now, some of you may be thinking, I live in a country that has experienced peace for decades. As we said before, this is not a prize that is just for local governments that are in situations of active conflict or imminent conflict, because inspiring peace initiatives can happen in every corner of the world. So any local government can apply for this award. And we use a broad definition of local government. Any subnational government that is a subnational government according to their national legislation can apply. This can be governorates, it can be regions, provinces, districts, municipalities, or cities. It's open to all of those local governments.
Well, this actually marks the end of our launch. I hope that you liked it. One final note, I would like to thank all partners such as the UCLG, VNG International, for which we work ourselves, Fonds, Pax for Peace, and The Hague. Thank you all for tuning in, and if you would like to request some more information, do not hesitate in reaching out to us or go to our website, peaceprize.uclg.org. Thank you very much, and hope to see all of your applications.